What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, it's some of my final thoughts ahead of tonight's Game Week 27 deadline. So I've gone through the latest press conference information at the time of recording, benching, headaches, assistant managers to target, as well as cheap defenders, and I've answered some of your questions as well. So let's get into it. So let's start with the latest press conference information. Fabian Hürzeler has held his for Brighton and said that he's still concerned about Welbeck and Veltman, who are doubtful. Now, if we take him at his word, that means that João Pedro's minutes should be pretty good for Bournemouth at home, and I would expect him to start. Once Welbeck is back, then there are doubts about João Pedro's minutes longer term, but for Game Week 27 specifically, he should be okay. So if you've got him in your squad and you're looking to play him, I think it's probably okay to do. There is still some risk there, because I don't know if Hürzeler is the most open manager in the league, but given what he said, I would predict João Pedro to start in Game Week 27. Any game week after that, let's wait and see. And I certainly wouldn't be buying him right now, but if you've got him, he's probably okay to play. So for Evanilson at Bournemouth, Iraola said the problem is not the injury, but the fact he hasn't trained. He says it's more a matter of the shape he is in. He says he could start, but he doesn't know how long he will last. So based on that, it'd be very unlikely for Evanilson to be in the 11 against Brighton. Therefore, I would expect Utara to start as the number 9. So no panic there at the moment. And we'll just have to reassess week by week and see how much minutes Evanilson gets. Also, Bournemouth have a FA Cup game against Wolves at home between game weeks 27 and 28. So that's another bit of information. So I probably wouldn't buy Utara right now. But based on what Iraola has said ahead of Brighton away in 27, I would expect Utara to start as the 9. So for Aston Villa, Unai Emery said they'll train on Monday afternoon and assess whether Morgan Rogers and Tyrone Mings can play against Crystal Palace. He also said Konza felt good after his comeback, just in case any of you still own him. Pau Torres is close, maybe this week, maybe next. And tomorrow is difficult for Ross Barkley, so he's unlikely to play against Palace. The key player there is obviously Rogers. If you don't own him, there's no need to buy him right now. For anyone that's got him in their squad, my guess would be, if I was making a prediction, that he'll start just based on all the matches we've seen so far. When he's available, he's always in the 11, but there is some doubt there. So if you do have the spare transfer to move him on to someone else, like a Jarrod Bowen, Kudus, Mitoma, a Bournemouth midfielder or something like that, and it's not going to take a hit, I would probably do it. If you're stuck for players this week, and Rogers missing out is going to be a bit of a disaster for you, I'd maybe take the -4, but where possible, I'd try and avoid it. So for those of you looking for a new assistant manager in Game Week 27, I've got this graphic from Rob T FPL. You can follow him on Blue Sky and Twitter under that handle. And this is the projected assistant manager points based off bookmakers' odds. At the top, as you might expect, is Glasner, who is home to Aston Villa, and that is a table bonus game. If Chelsea had drawn or beaten Aston Villa, it wouldn't have been a table bonus game, but because Villa won, it is. So I would probably say that Glasner is the best option. Just done really well against Fulham. That was an away game. I know a lot of people are talking about home and away form for Palace, but I really like that fixture. Not that Aston Villa is easy, but I think Palace are going to be pretty strong. Second place is Pereira for Wolves at home to Fulham. I don't mind that either. The projected points for Glasner are 10.3. Pereira is 9.6. The reason that I would lean towards Palace is just because of their firepower up front, the likes of Eze and Mateta. I think for Wolves, you've got Cunha. But outside of that, the quality goes down a little bit compared to, say, Crystal Palace. So I think if I was going between the two, I probably would go for Palace. But I think Pereira have made Wolves better defensively. Then you've got Maresca in third place, 9 points. No surprise, they're home to Southampton. Almost a guaranteed win on paper, plus lots of goals to go along with it. Probably the best non-table bonus game. Then it's Postecoglou, then it's Slot, then it's Amorim, interestingly, and then Graham Potter. But if you're going to move your manager this week, or you're activating the chip, I think you've got to go for the table bonus, Glasner or Pereira, because that could just be a huge score compared to Maresca for Chelsea. I would probably go for Crystal Palace. Not just recency bias, because they did so well in Game Week 26. I just think on paper, home to Villa with their firepower like Mateta, Eze, etc., I think it just looks the best. So I've got another £50 Amazon voucher up for grabs for Game Week 27. All you have to do is join the Let's Talk FPL Pick'em League over on Sleeper, which is completely free. You can scan the QR code on screen or use the link in the description below. Once you're in the league, just make your predictions for Game Week 27, which I'm going to do right now. So Brighton versus Bournemouth is a tough game to call, so I'm going to go for a draw, hopefully with a lot of goals in it, as I'm probably playing João Pedro and Utara. I'm going to go for Wolves to beat Fulham at home, Palace to beat Villa at home, and Chelsea definitely to beat Southampton. Brentford versus Everton. I think again will be quite close, but I'm going to give it to Brentford because I think their attack is just superior, even though Beto's doing really well right now. Forest will give Arsenal a tough game, so I'm going to go for a draw there. Spurs versus City, I'm going to go for a Spurs win. I don't know why, they just seem to always do okay against Man City, no matter how well they're playing in the league at the time. Man United to beat Ipswich, Liverpool to beat Newcastle, and West Ham definitely to beat Leicester. Super simple to play. Download for free using the link in the description below or scanning the QR code on screen. Whoever gets the most predictions correct will win that £50 Amazon voucher. If it's a tie, I'll do a random draw on the next deadline stream. So these were the players that were mentioned to me for benching headaches in Game Week 27. Isak's name came up quite a lot. And on paper, I think the two toughest fixtures you're going to have all season are Arsenal away and Liverpool away. And obviously, Isak's got one of them this week. But when you look at his XG per 90, it's very similar to like a Salah or a Haaland. And you just most of the time wouldn't bench those kind of players. So I'd almost treat Isak quite similarly to that. So although he's got Liverpool away, I've put him at the top of this list. Then I've gone for Cunha against Everton at home and Watkins against Palace away. Presumably Watkins will keep penalties, or there is some doubt there. I've just put him below Cunha because it's an away game. You could switch those two around. I think Watkins' goal threat from open play is definitely better, so it's quite a close call. I've gone for Mitoma, then Kluivert, then Utara, then Semenyo. They're obviously all playing in the same match. If the Bournemouth players were at home, I'd put them above Mitoma. I think Mitoma having the home game and his recent form just puts him at the top. Kluivert for the penalties, Utara because he's playing number 9, then Semenyo. If I was buying fresh, I'd probably buy Semenyo ahead of Utara. But in terms of Game Week 27, who to play, if Evanilson's not going to be fit enough to start right now, Utara's going to play as that number 9. So I'd put him slightly ahead. João Pedro is then the next one up. I think if you were 100% certain he's definitely starting, you could probably put him higher up this list, maybe even ahead of Mitoma because he is Brighton's penalty taker. But even though Hertzler has said that Welbeck is a doubt, I don't fully trust that João Pedro will start. That's why I put him a little bit lower. But I have got him ahead of Chris Wood just because Chris Wood is playing Arsenal at home. And I know that Arsenal at home is probably easier than Liverpool away for Isak. But Chris Wood's underlying numbers from open play just not as good as Isak, right? Isak is way ahead. That's why I've got him at the top. I just see them in different categories, despite how many goals Chris Wood has scored this season. Then Trossard against Forest away. In terms of the defenders, Trent against Newcastle at home has to be at the top. Gabriel and Munoz I found a bit more difficult to split. In the end, I just went for Gabriel against Forest away just because of how good the Arsenal defence can be and the goal threat from set pieces. Munoz's goal threat from open play is genuinely great as that wing back. I just think, although I would go for Glasner assistant manager and I think they can win, I think Villa will score. I'm more confident that Arsenal will get a clean sheet than Palace, let's just say that. So that's why I've gone for Gabriel ahead. But if you wanted to play Munoz, I don't blame you. And I would try and get him into your 11 if you can. And then Robinson at the bottom with Wolves away. So a few people asked me which cheap defenders to target if you're not free hitting in Game Week 29. This is the list that I came up with. Aït-Nouri is the most expensive player on the list at 4.7. And he's probably the best option as well. So 3 of the next 4 for Wolves are at home. So Fulham this week, Everton next week, and West Ham in Game Week 30. And the away game is Southampton, which looks great on paper in blank Game Week 29. We know he can be attacking. I think Wolves have improved defensively recently as well. He probably is the standout on this list. Then I've got Dorgu at Man United. If you don't want to buy a Man United player, I completely understand. Nobody is forcing you to do that. You can just ignore them. But at 4.5, with some of the positions we've seen him pick up since he's been in the team, I quite like the idea of him as a punt. Ipswich at home this week is good. Leicester away in 29, not bad either. But Arsenal at home in 28 is not ideal. So if you're looking for someone to bring in and just play every game, I would definitely just go for Aït-Nouri instead. But as a huge differential, Dorgu at 4.5, if you can cover Game Week 28, not bad. Howson at Bournemouth, I think in some ways the boat has maybe been missed on buying their defenders. Like some of you will have Kirkes, you're probably holding on to him. Some of you would already have Howson, you're holding on to him absolutely fine. But the next two are Brighton and Spurs away. Not ideal for clean sheets. It's Brentford at home in 29, which is not bad either. But a lot of people own Wissa or Mbeumo. So you're bringing in a defender against your attackers. And Ipswich at home is good, but it's in Game Week 30. So I like Bournemouth defenders for 29 and 30, but I'm not sure I'd buy them right now. Chelsea are great for the next two, but not so much afterwards. So someone like Colwell at 4.4, Southampton and Leicester at home next two. But Arsenal away in the blank is bad, and Spurs at home in 30 is not great either. So I like them for the next two, but not so much afterwards. And it always feels like Chelsea have just got a mistake in them, especially from a goalkeeping point of view. So on paper, I love the fixtures. I'd still probably rather go Aït-Nouri. Mykolenko is good for the blank, West Ham at home, but it's 2 away games before that, Brentford and Wolves. If you've got Mykolenko, you might consider playing him in those games, but I'm not sure they're ones you'd buy him for. And after 29, the fixtures get really rough for Everton. I don't see many clean sheets. And then Nottingham Forest are in a similar position. Like in the blank, it's Ipswich away, not bad. But before that, Arsenal at home and City at home. So you just can't buy them. So for me, you either go for Aït-Nouri to play every single week, you take a punt on Dorgu playing as a wing-back for Man United, but he's got Arsenal in 28, or you buy Chelsea for the next couple and then decide what to do about more defenders in 29 if you've got the luxury of lots of transfers. So let's get into some of your questions. For the first one, I basically put a bunch of your questions together. So would you sell Wood, Isak, Wissa or Watkins to get Cunha? Now, I spoke in my team selection video yesterday that I'm thinking about getting Cunha myself. I think he's a really good option, one of the best forwards to buy in Game Week 27. But we shouldn't consider him essential. He's really good, but he's not must-own. And I think if you're selling a player that's got a fixture in 29, you need to be really careful, especially if you don't have a stack of transfers ready to use. Wissa in particular, the fixtures are not that bad between now and 29. With Chris Wood, I understand it a little bit more because it's Arsenal and Man City next 2 fixtures, but they are both at home and it's Ipswich away in 29. So I don't even mind keeping hold of him either. If you can do Wood to Cunha for free and you're still going to be able to put out a pretty good team in 29 without taking too many hits, I don't mind it. I'd rather have Cunha than Wood for the next 3 game weeks. But it's not essential that you make that move, and I wouldn't do it for a hit. With Isak and Watkins, they both blank in 29. So if you're looking at points potential from now until 29, Cunha is probably better because he literally has an extra fixture. But I don't know if he's massively better over the next 2. If you can do Watkins to Cunha and that frees up money for another good move as well, I'd be tempted to do it. So for example, let's say you had Watkins and Rodgers, and you could do Watkins to Cunha, which would allow you to do Rodgers to Bowen as a massive differential. I really like that. But in isolation, I don't see a massive rush this week or next to sell Watkins to Cunha. Maybe you could delay that till 29 if you wanted to. And then Isak, I wouldn't sell until you absolutely need to. Liverpool away, West Ham away, not great on paper, but he is a much better FPL pick than Cunha. And that has... what's the word I'm looking for here? That has some merit, even though the fixtures are tougher, right? So although Cunha's got the better fixtures, Isak is the better pick in terms of goal threat and stuff like that. So I just don't think I could sell him. Like, is there a chance that Cunha outscores Isak this week? Absolutely. But I wouldn't sell him. And also, if you've got a lot of money tied up in Isak, he is someone you're going to want back later on. So just be careful about that as well, because the fixtures for Newcastle 30 onwards are good, and they've got that double in 32. So, long story short, I guess you could sell any of these players for Cunha, but I don't think there's a rush to do it this week, especially not for a hit. So who is the best third Liverpool player to buy now that slot assistant manager has ended? And just a reminder about their fixture run coming up. It's Newcastle at home in 27, followed by Southampton at home in 28. It's a blank in 29. Then it's Everton at home in 30, followed by Fulham away, West Ham at home and Leicester away. So the fixture run is pretty good. I think if you're not free hitting in 29, you've probably just got to let this go and not buy a third Liverpool player, despite how good Southampton at home looks as a fixture. And that game is smack bang in the middle of the 2 PSG Champions League games. So the player that you probably want, who is first choice, might be rested in that game. And I think for most people, you probably want a second attacker instead of a second defender. And that's where the issues really come in terms of minutes. So right now, Jota, Nunez, Diaz and Gakpo are all fit and available. Now, I know Nunez is not that in favour, but he's also maybe the perfect player to play against Southampton when you're resting some of the others for the PSG games. I don't think Slot will take that match lightly for what it's worth, right? There's still a league to win as well as Champions League. There is going to be some rotation in that match, you would think. And also, the last 2 games, Salah has only had 1 of Diaz, Gakpo, Jota or Nunez start with him. Usually it's kind of 2 of those players I mentioned. Now, it might just be because Gakpo is out injured and Jota they need to manage because he doesn't have the greatest track record of staying fit. Or maybe Slot has just got another way to play in some games as well. So for me, the attackers, the minutes are just not quite there apart from Szoboszlai. I'm just not sure he's worth buying with that blank when there's so many other good midfielders to go for right now. If you are free hitting in 29, you could definitely look at a Liverpool player as a third option, or a third Liverpool player, but they're probably not going to double in 33. So later on, you'll probably want someone else instead. So honestly, if you've got 2, that's probably enough right now. If I was picking 3 for minutes, I go Salah, Trent, and Van Dijk. If you want a second attacker, I'm really not sure who I would buy. Gakpo came off the bench against Man City, and we know his minutes have been pretty good when he was available. So I guess Gakpo, but then he's taken up a forward spot. And lots of people, like, Watkins, Isak, Cunha, there's so many good options right now. I don't think you need to risk it even with Southampton. So I'd probably go Trent, Van Dijk, Salah, or Trent, Salah, Gakpo. But honestly, I think 2 is probably enough. So what are your thoughts on Reece James? I think he'll play and will be a major differential for 2 weeks. That last part is true. He'll be a massive differential because I don't see many people going for him. I was a little bit surprised to see that he started 4 out of the last 5 matches. So 90 against Villa in game week 26. He was benched against Brighton in game week 25. But he started the 3 before that against West Ham at home, Man City away, and Wolves at home as well. And he's got to at least 60 minutes in each of those games. My problem is the fitness is always going to be a concern with him. And after starting 3 games in a row, he did then get benched against Brighton. So is there a guarantee that he will play both with Southampton and Leicester at home? We've seen Maresca rotate in easier fixtures already this season. If he can give Reece James a rest and then have him for more games later on, he'll probably take that chance. And also, Reece James can still be attacking, but I think what we're picturing generally is that marauding wingback that we saw previously. Like back in 2021-22, he got 5 goals, 9 assists. It was incredible. I want to see that Reece James back in the league. I'm just not sure he's there right now. And so for 4.8 million, he's a potential bargain, but I think he's going to be a transfer out later on. I just don't think he's so good for the next 2 fixtures that I would... I think it's hard to justify bringing him in just to have to take him back out, especially when you can't even guarantee that he's going to start those 2 games, and he's not that marauding wing-back anymore. So if you go for him, I genuinely hope he does well. I really want to see Reece James get back to being able to play week in, week out, not just for Chelsea, but for England as well. I think he could be incredible. I just don't have the faith. And so for FPL, I think I'd have to ignore him. So is it worth bringing in Pedro Neto for the next 2 fixtures? At 6.2 million as a punt, potentially. Southampton at home, Leicester at home, great fixtures, potential for huge returns in both of those games. No matter what you think Chelsea are playing like right now, those fixtures will turn their form around, right? I've got no doubt about that. Pedro Neto started as kind of the number 9 in the last game. And even if he doesn't play that position, I would expect him to be in the team because of the amount of injuries they've got. So I don't mind it at all. But in blank 29... it is then Arsenal away, not a great fixture. After that, the fixtures aren't that bad, right? Game week 30, from an attacking point of view, Spurs at home, Brentford away, Ipswich at home, pretty good. The problem is between 29 and 30, we've got the international break. Players are going to get back fit, and then how good are Neto's minutes going to be? So again, if you've got a stack of transfers ready to be used, and you want to take a punt for 2 really good fixtures back to back, then to take him out again, fair enough. But if you're sat there with 1 transfer, I think it's quite hard to justify. And I just also don't trust Maresca not to do something which means that like a Neto or a Nkunku just don't start one of the next 2 games. With the players they've got available, I think that's very unlikely. But I still don't know how much of my own money I would put on it. So I guess between Neto and Nkunku, I think if they both play 90 minutes in each of those games, Nkunku's probably better. But I guess my prediction would be that Neto gets better minutes. So probably I would go for him at 6.2. And again, I hope it works out, but there is definitely some risk there. But if you think a Chelsea player is going to play the next 2 games, 80 to 90 minutes, they've probably got a really good chance of doing well. So if you want to take a punt, absolutely go for it, especially if you've got those transfers to use. If you've enjoyed that video, make sure to give it a like and hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to join the Let's Talk FPL League over on Sleeper in the Premier League Pick'em game. A voucher up for grabs this week. Just get your predictions submitted before the matches start. Otherwise, I'll be back later on for the deadline stream, starting at 4 PM UK time, right up until that 6 PM deadline. So I'll catch you then.